Hello, and welcome to Loneliness and You, a podcast on the research and experience of loneliness. I'm your host, Axel Seaman. My guest today is John Kelly. Dr. John Kelly is a leader in artificial intelligence and an internationally recognized professional ultra runner. John has won some of the world's toughest races and is one of only 3 people to complete the Barkley Marathons more than once. He also holds numerous records, including the fastest completion of the Pennine Way, as well as being a previous record holder for the fastest marathon dressed as a video game character. After spending a few years in the UK, John is now in Tennessee, along with his wife and 4 kids. John, welcome. I'm so pleased to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Let's dive right into it. As you know, we're inviting our guests to bring something to their interviews that represents their experience, their loneliness possibly to them. So what have you brought us?
So this is one of my headlamps or head torches, as you would say in the UK. So this is my high-powered one that I use on some of the longer things that I do, things that involve more darkness and travel through the night. So typically when I have this on, I'm on my own, somewhere out in the mountains, late at night.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that you would be wearing on the Barkley Marathons, amongst other races. I take it looks very fetching, except that there's nobody going to be around to see it. So tell us a little bit about these marathons and what it's like to be out there in the middle of the night or during the day.
So I'm at a broad level. I'm an ultra runner, which is simply anything longer than a marathon. But my niche within that niche is multi-day mountain events, and so like the Barkley Marathons, or perhaps the one where I use this most is the Spine Race in the UK, which takes place along the Pennine Way in mid-January. So you're looking at about 16 hours of darkness per day at that time of year and in that area. And so most of these can be anywhere from 2 to 5 days. And so multiple nights that you're traveling through, trying to stave off sleep and continue forward. And it's difficult, but also quite enjoyable to me to be out there and kind of just with my own thoughts and dealing with the elements just with my own wits and the resources at hand. It's while challenging, also quite peaceful to me.
Mhm. So just, to cue our listeners in a bit, the Barkley Marathons take place in Tennessee. There are 5 loops, I think, through largely non-tracked wooded territory, 20 miles each loop. Though apparently that's a bit debatable whether it's really 20 miles.
Yeah, the 20 miles is part of the mental games that the race director plays. It's closer to a marathon per loop, about 26 miles per loop.
So it's basically 5 marathons in a row through the woods, like demanding woods, some of it at night, with an altitude difference of 12,000 feet, if I got that right.
Yeah, that changes each year. I think the latest course was around 13,000 per loop, so around 65 to 67,000 total for across the 5 loops.
And so that's broadly like twice up Mount Everest and down. Do I have that right?
Yeah, from sea level.
Right. From sea level. Okay. So just so that we know what we're talking about. Tell us a little bit more about the experience of doing this. I mean, I'm sure there are many aspects to this experience. I want to get a little bit into, the role other people play in that experience, the role yourself plays in that experience, the role your body plays in that experience. Anything along those dimensions. I'm curious in a bit.
Sure. So, normally these things start off, and there's due to the terrain we're traveling through and the sensitive ecological area. that we're going through. That the race is limited to about 40 people each year. So it's already a small group, and starting off, we can still have a fairly sizable group for the first loop or so. But after that, you're typically going down to maybe three people together, which certainly aids with navigation and alertness, and kind of keeping each other in check as far as possibly wandering off the unmarked course, or kind of losing the fight with sleep deprivation. Eventually, though, the last loop, you're on your own. You're forced to go in opposite directions. So if you are still with someone at that point, you're headed out on the fifth loop and your most sleep deprived state, by yourself, and that is quite the unique experience at that point in time. Again, I in an odd way, rather enjoy it, even in the moment, as long as I can stay awake. But a lot of it is also what we refer to in ultra running as type 2 fun, which, type 1 fun is your traditional, everyone's laughing and enjoying it and having a good time. And type 2 fun is the fun that maybe you're not enjoying it at the time, but later on you look back at the experience and the memory and say, "Wow, that was pretty cool. I'm glad I did that." And so there's some of that involved, but it comes down to, that battle within your own head, with your body, certainly, is quite fatigued and beat up by that point in a race. But for me, it's always primarily more of the mental struggle of just staying focused, staying alert, not making any mistakes. Staying awake is particularly a challenge, for me, more so than others.
Tell us a little bit more about the experience of that type 2 fun. So, I read in one of your blogs that once in a situation like that, you had an experience of seeing an old high school friend, and you thought very possibly this was a hallucination, except in the end, incredibly, it turned out not to have been one. So I want to, invite you to tell us more about an experience in which you can't be sure whether you hallucinated this. So you must be. Are you really? Are you so in your head that reality just seems like a dream, or are you intensely connected to reality? Is it all distorted? Like, what's it like?
Yeah, that's the way that I've often explained it to people. Some people have these lucid dreams where they're dreaming and they think it seems completely real. They think it's real. It feels real. In these situations, I kind of have the opposite of that. And instead of thinking that a dream is reality, I'm out there wondering if reality is a dream. And I have to keep reminding myself that no, this is real. I have to keep moving forward. I'm actually out here. And so I did have that experience on loop 5 of Barkley, a year ago in 2023. And I stopped to take a short nap, which can be quite effective in these situations. And I lifted my head to see someone coming along the road there next to that I had laid down next to, and I just immediately, without even thinking about it, say, "Oh, hey, Kit, how's it going?" And um, Kit was a friend from high school. I hadn't seen him in 20 years at all. And he just kind of laughs and says, that's a John Kelly nap if I've ever seen one," and continues on with his wife and two kids, as if everything is perfectly fine. And it wasn't until after the race that I was like, wait a second, that didn't happen. What are the chances that I see someone way out there on a Thursday morning in this remote part of this isolated park? It happens to be a high school friend I haven't seen in 20 years. I immediately recognize him despite not seeing him for 20 years. And he just continues on, like finding someone laying down in the mud in the woods is perfectly normal. All those things added up. And I said, no, I had my first hallucination. Like some ultra runners, when they get really sleep deprived, they have very vivid hallucinations. I mean, pink unicorns and elephants and all sorts of things they see out there. That has never happened to me. So I was convinced it had finally happened. And I looked him up and reached out to him. And he said, no, no, that was actually us. That really happened.
That's an incredible story. Yeah, I want to like in just a bit, I want to talk a little bit about, this in the context of what you do for a living and the relation between dreams and reality. In your view, before we do that, let's stick a little bit to. Do you feel alone when you're out there? And in these extreme conditions, I mean, it's dangerous. Everything depends on what you do. There's, at some stage, no network to back you up. Is this a sense of utter loneliness, isolation, or the opposite?
Uh, it is. I mean, I know that I'm in these things that I do. I know how to reach safety fairly quickly. So I'm very rarely concerned in that matter. But it is a feeling of isolation, and to be honest, I value that. I enjoy it, and I value it. People ask me, like, even when I'm training, like, well, you're out there for so long. Do you listen to anything? Like, do you have music or podcasts? And at Barkley, that's not allowed. But even training, no, I don't.
Mhm.
And it's, doing these things is kind of the one time when I am fully disconnected from everything else. There's no noise. There's nothing that I have to be thinking about. My mind is free to do its own thing, and it really does come down to just again just me and my own wits and my own mind and the resources I have at hand. And I think that that's a very valuable experience that we need more of.
Mhm.
That most people in modern society, they're not forced to go through these sort of challenges that really push us to our limits and where we're fully relying on ourselves. And that's a good thing in terms of, we're not having to go through life threatening, truly dangerous or catastrophic situations. But those experiences do build a lot of mental strength. They teach us valuable lessons about ourselves that, those apply to other areas of life, and they certainly apply if we do find ourselves in one of those real situations where it really matters. A couple months ago, my area was absolutely devastated by a hurricane and catastrophic flooding, and I found it immediately that a lot of these things that I've kind of experienced and learned in this synthetic, safe environment of ultra running that those were quite valuable to me going through this actual, we'll say, situation that mattered.
Yeah. So, like, so I'm a sort of very, very low key runner. I do my 5 or 10K in the woods, like, so 3 times a week. Not very successfully in the spring. I fell and broke my shoulder doing it. So,
Mm.
so not, nowhere near your level. But I also have, when it goes well, this experience of reality actually not retreating from me, but me being fully immersed in it, and sort of being attuned in a rhythm with your body, and then the environment, the surroundings that you move in. So I don't find it, but again, it's nothing like a marathon or ultra marathon. I don't find it isolating at all. I find it, on the contrary, I find it deeply grounding. I find it deeply connecting.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, and it's something that when I've done the spine race that I referred to, that one in particular, I've had to stop and think on multiple occasions, like, why do I want to do this? Why do I enjoy doing this? Whereas most of the other crazy, unreasonable things that I do, they're at least, you're getting beautiful mountain views, or there's some other kind of genuinely, again, type one aspect of the experience. Whereas, the Pennine Way, you're out there and it's cold and windy and wet, and you're tramping through bogs. It's probably raining. Again, you're getting maybe 8 hours of light per day. You're not really seeing anything. You're bundled up. And to me, it's that's the one that most of all just kind of pulls me within myself and cuts me off from this noise, where I'm out there in this little shell under my jackets and however many layers that I'm wearing, buffered from the wind and the rain and everything else that might be going on beyond there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you that, we need more experiences of that kind. We need the kind of thing that brings us out of our technologically mediated, environments to actually, sort of remain in touch with what's real, what's the case with the facts, right? Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the connection between all of that and what you do for a living. So, you are a data scientist, you are an AI expert, you did your grad work on brain computer interfaces. And when one looks at your blog, you have a very systematic, one could say, sort of technological approach to your own mind. You map out your motivations, you distinguish between short-term motivations and ultimate goals, and you make charts about that. Do you see your mind, and do you see yourself as you engage in your running and when you plan it? Do you see yourself as one very efficient, beautifully designed machine?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I have certainly thought of myself as kind of my own science experiment in times doing these, and I do break a lot of my running down with data and with analysis, the same way that I might approach a research problem or something that I'm doing for my job. I don't know that I've ever thought of myself as a machine, as I think that this aspect of this mental aspect of it is what really separates me from that. So there are certainly inputs and outputs, and those have a relationship on each other, but in between is this sort of unpredictable, unknown part, and maybe somewhere way down there, it's a machine, and if I knew, if I could map out every neuron in my brain and knew, had every single data point about how all of those chemical interactions work, then maybe I could say that. But part of the fun for me is kind of exploring it at this higher level, where there is this mystery of how am I going to respond? How am I going to handle this situation? And unlike what I would hope for with a machine, I sometimes don't know.
Right. Yeah. I didn't mean, machine pejoratively at all.
No,
It's
that's fine.
I myself, think that on some level of description, we can be characterized as incredibly, sort of well-designed machines that up to a point fit perfectly in our ecological niches. I think, that's a way of describing who we are. You are an incredibly driven person. When I look at your blog and what you do, you relish competition. You talk a lot about intrinsic motivation. Tell us about that a little bit.
So that is where I do have these goals of being out there and wanting to truly explore what I'm capable of and how I respond in these situations. And when I look at that, that's primarily, I think, what, particularly in running and races of all levels, uh, some people are kind of seeking this extrinsic validation. They're looking for the kudos on Strava or the likes on Instagram or whatever. They're looking for recognition and for people to say what a great job that is, and on some level that's fine. I think that we all do need and value that type of validation, but to truly excel and truly push past what we thought we were capable of, I believe it has to run deeper than that. It has to be something that we want for other reasons, whether that's to validate to ourselves what we're capable of, or again, in my case, just to uh, see how much I can grow as a person, whether physically or mentally. You look at where I was 10 years ago when I first started running again. I mean, if you had told me that I was going to finish Barkley or do half the other things I've done, I would have said you were absolutely insane. And so that's what this has been for me, this progressive kind of iterative journey of taking one step forward at a time, to where eventually I'm at this point where it is far beyond the horizon of where I initially was. There was no possible way I could have seen myself doing these things. And that motivation to continue exploring and to continue moving forward is what really drives me.
Mhm. How do other people come into that? Like, so there's a way of thinking about motivation and about our species who I agree, we have a thing that you could call intrinsic motivation, and it plays a huge role in making us who we are. You could also think that this motivation is ultimately something that each individual can only have by themselves. Like, you can bring other people into it, you can decide to do something together, but ultimately, this is something that, sort of defines you alone. Would you agree with that?
So this is something that my thoughts on this have evolved quite a bit over the years. And while initially, when I first set out to do the Barkley Marathons in 2015, that was a very personal, individual goal. Still, though, at that point, we set these goals, and there's almost always there has to be a benchmark from other people for us to know kind of what is realistic, what is a good goal, what might be possible. A great example of this is the Pennine Way, where I initially broke a 30-year-old record on that. But then just a week later, my good friend Damien Hall broke my record. And he did it in a time that initially I wouldn't have really thought about doing. I mean, basically just round numbers. The original record was around 65 hours. I then did it in 64, and then he did it in 61. And so by him doing it in 61, that really kind of reset my thinking of what was possible. And I laid out a schedule and a more aggressive plan that I otherwise would not have done, and came back the next year and did it in 58 hours. So we do have these individual goals, but we're also using each other as benchmarks, as motivation. And I look at those things as kind of just rungs on a ladder. And so while initially I might have been pursuing what I can do best as an individual, there have certainly been things like that where I very much value contributing to seeing what we can collectively do, and what we can push towards. And I've also had many uh, events supported runs, particularly in the UK, where I have a crew out there with me, support runners carrying things for various stretches. And those, to me, I've largely viewed as a team effort, and I've taken a lot of. I don't know if there's a term for this. To me, there's extrinsic motivation, which is outside validation coming in. There's intrinsic, which is just all internal.
Hmm.
It is
Hmm.
coming from the inside, and it's staying inside.
Hmm.
And then there's this inside out validation, where I have people out there coming to help me at 2 a.m. in terrible weather, going through the mountains. And I think about that, and I say, they're coming to do this. I can't just quit. I can't have their efforts be for nothing. I have to make it worthwhile for them to have done that. And that has been extremely motivating to me.
Hmm. different topic that I wanted to ask you about. Running pervades your life. It can sound, when one, listens to you, when one reads your blogs, that, you are running for life, that, what propels you forward through this unwieldy terrain day and night is really, a kind of life force. And it's intrinsically motivated. It's not like, sort of some non-human animal, foraging for food. This is something that you do out of, your own will and for itself. And an interesting question from a philosophical perspective is, how does that connect to mortality, our knowledge that, we're not going to be around forever? Do you have any views on that?
Yeah, there are a lot of layers to that question, and many directions we could take it. I think that the biggest one to me is simply that this is, while it's challenging, while it's difficult, while there are moments where I ask myself, why on earth am I doing this? It is ultimately an activity that I enjoy, and I enjoy soaking in those moments. I enjoy the growth that happens from it. I enjoy the places that I get to see and experience along the way. Those are things that I will always have as memories as I progress and my body ages to the point where I'm no longer capable of doing them. And to me, growing and hopefully passing some of that growth and the lessons and the knowledge along to future generations, and being able to truly experience life is, that's critical to me. I think I don't know who originally said it, but there's probably a dozen variations out there of the quote that, we're here not just to survive, but to live. And, if we are just going day to day, doing nothing more than what it takes to survive, we're really no better than bacteria at that point. I mean, every living organism has that basic function and that basic goal. And so, as humans with this higher level of thinking and with this conscious, I think that it is, not only necessary, but it's in effect our responsibility to take that opportunity that we've been given and blessed with to really experience life and explore what it has to offer, and how we can grow through it.
Yeah. Huh. So, your running is sort of the most intense way of living, I take it, for you, or one of the most intense way of livings that, you've got.
Yeah, it's just something that I'm passionate about, and I enjoy, and I've found it a great way, not only for me to get that enjoyment, but again to learn and grow. And if there's anything that my kids take away from what I'm doing and look at it, I hope that it's not, oh, dad's a good runner of crazy long distances. I hope it's, oh, dad was passionate about something, and he pursued that passion, and he set big goals, and he learned from his mistakes and his failures, and he carried on. And maybe ultimately none of them like running, and that's fine. But I do hope that they find something that they're passionate about, and they uh, pursue it. And they pursue it strongly.
Yeah. I want to close this podcast. We've got like a few more minutes left, and I discovered while looking you up that we share a favorite poem. Robert Frost, "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening." It seems a very apt favorite poem for an ultra runner. Tell us a little bit about that poem and why you like it.
It's without a doubt my favorite poem, probably the only one I can say by heart, and it is just, even just the flow of the poem, the words themselves. I mean, it's one of those things where even if I didn't understand English, I would I would love the flow of the words in that poem. But each stanza just on its own, it has this surface level beauty if you visualize what's going on. But
a much deeper meaning beyond all that. And I love this progress of just this guy that's out enjoying the woods. And, his horse, I think in this case, kind of represents the expectations and what other people are thinking we should be doing. And the horse is kind of saying, well, we're going this way to get to our destination, right? Like, why are we stopping here? Let's carry on. Let's get to the farmhouse. What are we doing? And meanwhile, the guy is enjoying the journey, and he's stopping to really savor that and take it in. And it's in an environment that other people might not view as all that appealing. You're out in the woods by yourself at night, and it's cold. But again, to me, that is just there are honestly few times or situations I enjoy more in these ultras than a peaceful winter's night. It is just something that is so calm and beautiful about it. And so that aspect alone I love. And then the final ending where he brings that back around and admits I'd love to stay here forever, but I have responsibilities. I do have obligations that I have to get back to. And so it is just stopping to savor this moment and take in the peace and the calm from that before getting back to his actual life and what he has to do.
Yeah. John, thank you so much for your time. That was wonderful, truly enlightening conversation. I wish you all the best with your future running, and who knows, perhaps you're going to make Barkley a fourth time.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll get back out there to give it a go at least. So thank you very much. I enjoyed our chat.
Thank you for listening to Loneliness and You, a podcast on the research and experience of loneliness. My guest today was John Kelly. If you want to join the conversation or have suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at lonelinnesspod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at loneliness.pod. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to Loneliness and You wherever you get your podcasts to help others find our work. Loneliness and You is produced by Stacey Goldman and myself, Axel Seaman. Our podcast is engineered and edited by Steve Salina. Our introductory sound was designed by Dave Meckin, and our logo art is by Paul Fisher-Davies. The podcast is financially supported by Bentley University. Thanks again for listening. Talk soon.